All right, Kory, you want to take it away?
Thanks, Zach. Yeah, nice to meet everybody. Gonna briefly talk about filmmaking here, but I'm really gonna go all over the place because this journey has, like Zach was saying, it's kind of a life's work, and so it's taken me all over the place from you know uh, New Zealand to China to the Amazon jungle, learning martial arts, and all sorts of stuff. But essentially, I started out really young making films, and I always wanted to get into the film industry. I was really lucky when I was about 20 to get in at Square in Hawaii, and I started learning a lot about the filmmaking process. So I just quickly start with a little background. So I started with Square, and we learned how to do things one particular way, which was high detailed painting with it was all animation and motion capture, but they really, took a lot of time into the detail of painting things, the clouds. But then when I went to ESC, I got a totally different background in how things were done, digitizing everything. So instead of painting it, we were capturing the virtual cinematography, they called it. So they were capturing the real world. They had special machines that could scan the clothing, and they had ways with the chrome ball photography and all this multiple exposure bracketing, so you could capture HDR images, all that stuff we were pioneering back then. It was an amazing crew. I learned so much at those two facilities, but those facilities unfortunately closed. And I then went on to Weta, and Weta was very similar to Square in that everything was highly crafted. They took a lot of it was really passion driven. But they're way down in New Zealand, and they're all on their own. So there was this can-do attitude that I really enjoyed. And they were very self-sufficient. I mean, they were by themselves. So if they needed to make crowds, they wrote the software. If they needed, to make the armor, they literally made a company to do that. It was passion driven, but it was also a startup like the other two companies. I then went on to ILM, and I got a taste of what a very established pipeline is like, and I learned quite a bit about projection matte painting and some different techniques. And once I got to ILM, I felt like I was ready to go back into directing. I had made quite a few short films as a boy, and I really wanted to get back into being behind the camera and telling my own stories. I kind of got into visual effects to learn how to tell fantastic stories. And it was kind of after Star Wars, I felt like I had done everything I set out to do, The Matrix, Lord of the Rings. And I was ready to step back into, making films. So as a director, usually there's no set path really for directing. One of the ways people do it is they make a short film, and that catches attention, and from there they're able to make a feature film. I've had several films, several friends try this approach. I'm going to tell you how it went for me. Other people get agents, and they end up not. They haven't made it yet, but we're all trying. We're all trying any which way. And if anything I wanted to impart in this talk was there's no right way to do it. There's no one way to skin the cat. You've got to try every single thing you can to get through. And one of the things is eventually going to work. So I started with this short film here, and I was taking ideas I learned from The Matrix, which was the virtual cinematography stuff we were doing. And I was trying to do it on a laptop. I was trying to do it on a budget. And so using the chrome ball stuff and all the different exposure bracketing, we were basically, I was capturing images. This is a beach in Marin, and then I added the CG character. It took me about 6 months, not working, just working on this full time on the weekends, 2 or 3 in the morning, basically killing myself to get this first short film done. And it showed in festivals around the world. It was pretty awesome. Once I got it on 35 millimeter film, which cost about $8,000 to do that, that opened doors and got me into festivals. So we showed at Pixar. We showed one of the places that we showed was this LA Shorts Film Festival, and at the ArcLight. And this is my friend John, and he was one of the producers on it, and he also worked on my very first feature film called Aquarius. way back in college. But he flew out and we saw it all on the big screen. It was amazing. So it was about 6 months of work. And we finally got to see the 5 minutes. Steve, also from college, he did the audio and did the sound design, and it sounded amazing, like with all the surround sound and everything. So it's really exhilarating to see that. And one of the judges, his name was Chris Meledandri. He eventually went on to be the CEO of Illumination Pictures. It does the Minions and Despicable Me. But back then he was working for Fox, and they were looking for new films because they were doing the Ice Age movies. And Ice Age, was like 2 or 3 at that time, and they were looking for something new. And he saw this film, and he reached out, and we started discussing, what I had next. And one of the mistakes I made with the short film was that I didn't make a short film about the feature. I made a feature that was completely different, and my concept was kung fu. And here I made a short film that was totally sci-fi. So if people want to do this, my suggestion is to make a short film about what the feature is, because it gets people excited. And then they want to know, well, what happens next? And I was like, well, what happens next is I have this totally different kung fu movie. But anyway, China and the Beijing Olympics were coming out, were going to be happening in 2008. So there was a lot of hype about China at the moment. And we started talking to Blue Sky, and they said, this sounds great. Let's make White Tiger Legend. And we started going through the business end of things, and they started doing their homework, and they discovered that Kung Fu Panda was being made by DreamWorks. And DreamWorks was going to spend about double the budget of what they were going to spend at Blue Sky. So I pushed hard. I said, hey, there's Ants and Bugs Life. There's all these competing films, Deep Impact, and, we could go head to head. And they were like, no, no, no. We're not going to do that on half the budget. So they ended up doing this film, Horton Hears a Who, and this is a little outtake from the film where Horton actually does kung fu. I mean, it's a Dr. Seuss movie, and he's doing kung fu. But they ended up obviously not choosing the film. So it was a big high after 6 months of work, but it ended up being a big low. After that, John's sister, previously, John here, his sister Angie connected us with Rhythm and Hughes in LA. And they were just starting to set up offices overseas in Taiwan and India. And in that meeting, I was able to talk to them, and I was about 25 at the time and surrounded by people that were much older and established in the industry. And they kind of looked at me like a kid. And so I bit off a little more than I could chew. And I told them I would show them the full draft in, about 2 weeks. Give me 2 weeks, I'll write the script. Prior to that, the idea was just forming in my head. But at this point, I committed to writing a full script. And I had written scripts before, so it wasn't beyond me, but it was that push that I needed to really sit down and bust this out. So I did write the script. I got it to him. John Hughes's wife, she was really keen on it, but ultimately they went with Life of Pi instead. And, unfortunately, that won a couple Oscars. I think that was probably a good decision for them, but not for me. I then went on to try and find agents. So I had a script at this point, and I'm like, let me find an agent and they can get me into some studios and get some more meetings. I tried the Wachowskis, that connection through the Matrix, and their agents were at Circle of Confusion. I tried submitting stuff, and I couldn't get through. I then went to the Gotham Group, who are literary agents. And when you call them on the phone, nobody's very receptive. So I just dressed up in my best suit and walked in there one day. I wouldn't recommend that, other than I was confident that I had a good script and I had a short film and I knew what I was doing. I wasn't winging it. But basically, after sitting there most of the day, I got 15 minutes to talk to somebody, and they explained to me that you need an agent to get an agent. And I'm like, well, how does that work? How do you ever get in? So she said I needed a referral from an agent. And then she explained that the way literary agents work was they weren't going to take my script to a studio. What they were going to do was wait for a studio to present them with an idea, like, we want to make a time travel movie. And from there, they had the list of writers that would then write the script. So unless I wanted to be a writer, getting a literary agent did not make sense. So I kind of packed up everything and went back to San Francisco at that point and regrouped. That's when I got hit with the adjustable rate mortgage scam. This is kind of off topic here, but I had a vision of owning a house one day, and the house that I wanted with a yard and stuff like that in the Bay Area was completely unaffordable. So I thought, let me just get in on something. And then maybe in 7 years' time, I could sell that. And maybe with two incomes, we could afford something. There was a girl I thought I was going to marry. That didn't end up working out, but I was planning. And what happened was I got this fixed rate mortgage, and the way it works is the first 3 years are fixed, and then after the fourth year, the most it can go up is 1%. They told me. So I figured after 7 years, that would be 7%. That would be the most I could pay. So I would have to wait. I had 7 years to get this house out from under me. Otherwise, I couldn't afford it. But what happened was after the fourth year, 2007, they said, well, we started counting on day one. So when my first increase came, it was 4%. And I was like, hang on a minute, it's only supposed to go up one a year. And they said, no, it went up one a year starting day one. And it's been 4 years. So now it's 7%. So suddenly I was hosed. I could not afford one more increase. And I had to sell the house. So here, the two companies I had started out working with had closed. I couldn't afford a house on a single salary, and I really had to just reevaluate my life, kind of regroup. And it reminded me of this story. This class in high school, one of my psychology teachers, Dr. Tucker, he was awesome. He would come up with all these crazy scenarios. And one of the classes, he divided the group up into three groups, into a lower class, middle class, and an upper class. And there was like three people in the upper class and 15 people in the middle class, and the rest was in the lower class. And for an hour, he gave us the rules and we played this game. And at the end of the hour, one person from the lower class had moved up, and then I think like one person from the upper class had come to the middle class. But overall, no matter how hard you played the game, nobody really moved anywhere. And he explained that once the game was over, that he had given everybody different sets of rules. We were like, hang on, I thought we were all playing by the same set of rules. And he's like, no, no, I gave each section a different set of rules. And he said, if you want to move up, you can't do it the same way you're doing it. You have to learn the new set of rules. And that really didn't, resonate with me when I'm in high school. I'm like, okay, I kind of get that. But once I got to this point in my life, that kind of, I remembered that. And I thought, I need to reevaluate the fundamental stories of who I think I am, because clearly the way I'm doing it at this point isn't going to get me where I want to get to. I couldn't get an agent, like I said, the other things weren't working out. So I started researching other stuff like The Secret, Think and Grow Rich, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and The Alchemist is a great book as well. The Alchemist is kind of like if you take the leap of faith, the universe will conspire on your behalf. And here's a cool quote from Joseph Campbell, Follow Your Bliss. The heroic life is living the individual adventure. There's no security in following the call to adventure. And that is the truth. You kind of have to let go of everything and take a leap of faith. So these ideas were starting to formulate. I wasn't at this point committed to doing a feature. I just had this idea, but life itself was physically changing for me. So I was asking myself, how am I going to make it and still do the things that I love to do? And basically from reading all these books, it came down to the more people you can help, the more you will receive in return. So I started shifting my thoughts to what is it that I can give the world? What is the lessons that I've been through that I can help other people with? And by helping as many people as possible, then maybe I would be able to afford a house. It was literally, that was the thought process. So at this point, I focused on my martial arts training. I was almost a black belt. And it just so happened that the following year, the housing market collapsed. So I would have gone underwater had I kept that house. So I was free to keep working on the film. Kung Fu Panda was a huge success. So that also was a boost, because here, I knew that we couldn't compete back in the day, but it was still a good idea. So that kind of helped. And I emailed Fox again. I said, hey, can we make it now? Like, you see how successful Kung Fu and animation is going to be. And they said, nope, Kung Fu Panda 2 just got greenlit. So we're not going to compete against that. I said, crap. So I continued, I took my black belt test, and that was an amazing, very grueling path of a warrior. And I completed that journey, and that was amazing. So that was about 2008. I then went down to the Amazon. So this was a total kind of, I let go of everything. I didn't have, all the future that I had planned kind of went up in smoke. And I was looking for the next stage. And the next step was in the Amazon jungle. And I started learning healing. And I started healing from this trauma of the training that I was going through. I started learning about chi, and I started learning about straightening energy and all these woo-woo concepts that were kind of banned from my martial arts training. They were just never taught because, one, people really didn't understand them, and two, they weren't very scientific. But in this altered state of consciousness with these shamans in the jungle, it's kind of like the Matrix film where you instantly learn how to fly a helicopter, or you learn jujitsu, or whatever it is that you were focusing on. If you had an honest intent, you could instantly learn these things. And so I started receiving these downloads of information, and it was, one, blowing my mind because I was an atheist at the time, and two, like, it was just giving me the insights that I had been missing about martial arts and what the true meaning of the martial arts is. And this is the information that really is in the story, White Tiger, that changes it from a kung fu movie to really a universal healing movie. And that is kind of hidden in the movie, but once you watch the film has been carefully crafted and designed to be a healing experience. And you can't tell audiences that because nobody really has ever watched a film like this before. And so this is one of the things that keeps me going every day, is knowing that this is still unique, no matter how many kung fu movies are out there. This isn't a revenge film. This isn't, anything like that. This is totally unique, and it's going to help a lot of people. So after that, I worked on Avatar, and I bring that up because Avatar was stereo, so they planned every shot out very carefully, and so you could watch the entire film at a very low quality before they did it at a high quality. And they call that previs, but usually previs is just for an action sequence. But this was everything, the dialogue. And when I watched that, I thought to myself, this is how I can show some studios how we are unique, because they're very risk adverse. They don't want to make anything that's new. They want to kind of stick with what they know and what works. But if I could show them something that blew their minds and they could experience it, then my hope was that they would fund it. So here's some more cool pictures from the Amazon. Like, we stayed in these bungalows and we would sleep in these mosquito nets. And this little bucket down here is a puke bucket because you're doing a lot of purging and healing. We would be, we wouldn't eat the piranhas, but we were on a strict diet of bananas and plantains and some other things. It was amazing. The jungle itself isn't particularly high. I had this vision for movies that it was just this huge canopy, but it just goes on forever. And at night, it comes to life with all the animals. It's just so tranquil. It's very safe. You think about jaguars and stuff, but it was extremely peaceful. So when I got done with Avatar, I felt like, okay, let's do this. Let's do the previs. And so I rewrote the script several more times. I learned that from my very, very first film, that you need to have the script really flying off the page. You can't just film something and expect it to suddenly get good. It's got to be good before you shoot it, and shooting it will, hopefully the actors will make it better. And the actors we found through Craigslist in the Bay Area. And I just sent out a casting call, and we started rehearsals. We only found 20 actors. Some of them were from video games, some of them were theater, some of them were film. And there was about 30 speaking parts. So one of the things on this film is I'm always reminding myself that I have everything that I need. I just need to look at it differently. And so I figured out that Eric here, he did about 5 or 6 voices. Deirdre did 2 voices, and another guy named Lance, he did several voices, and then we had all the characters we needed. So it was perfect. So we started recording. The dialogue recording at Joe's in Oakland was one of the highlights of the film. And working with actors, I mean, it's fun and you're having a good time and everything. Definitely one of the highlights of production. After that, I started the motion capture, and what I would do is play the dialogue through these speakers here, and then I would act out everything. You know, if you see Andy Serkis and these other actors, they're performing live on the stage. They are actually creating the performance. I didn't do anything like that. I had to play like 20 or 30 different characters. So the actors were making the decisions in the sound booth, and I was just kind of trying to move my body in accordance with their performance. And it really worked out. It worked great. I did the majority of the roles. I didn't plan on doing all the roles. There was a whole team set up to do the fight choreography. And unfortunately, I remember asking one of them if they could change a couple things, and they said, "Well, why don't you just do it yourself?" And I thought, well, if that's how it's going to be, I guess I'll take your advice to heart, and I will. So I did. And the fight scenes, choreographed them, and I would fight against myself, both sides, and then I would combine the two characters together. So it was definitely a different approach, but I didn't have to worry about hitting anybody because I could go full speed. I didn't have to pull my punches. I didn't have to worry about where the camera was going to be set up, because when you usually do fight scenes, you have to position things so it looks like it's going to be an impact, and then you got to sell it. When you get hit, you really got to move your head. You know, all these things we were testing out and learning as we go. But yeah, it really works. And 2 of the ladies came on set to perform the female roles. You can't cheat the dynamics of the body and the way the hips are positioned and the way a lady's move is very different. So Alice and Donna came on to do those 2 roles, and they knocked it out of the park as well. So at that point, I had a feature length full of previs, and it took me about 6 months to edit it all together. That was a grueling 16 months. Mind you, during this time, I'm not getting paid. I'm not going out. I don't have time for a girlfriend. I'm spending 16 hours a day trying to get this thing done. This is what a previs looks like on the lower left. So it's just some rough shapes, but you're getting the camera movement, you're getting the timing, you're getting the flow of the story, you're getting all the action sequences and everything. And it's really awesome when it comes together. When it's not coming together, it's an emotional train wreck, because you are 45 minutes into the movie, let's say, you're editing it, and then suddenly the scene isn't working. And the thoughts going through your head are like, oh my God, I've gotten this far, and now it sucks. Nobody's going to want to watch the rest of this movie, you know. And so for about 2 or 3 weeks there, what I would do is I would just start working on another part of the film, and then maybe when I was in the shower or at lunch or something, I would suddenly get an insight, and I would go back and I would fix it up. And then suddenly it would be working. And then you'd be flying again. You feel like $1,000,000. So it's a huge emotional roller coaster. That's all I can explain editing like, because at one moment your movie is awesome, and then the next moment it's total crap and it's going down the drain, and you don't know how to fix it. You just got to keep trying things. There's no default, go-to reset button or anything like that. But after 16 months, I got the first 120 minutes done, and we showed it and screened it in Japantown. Steve and his audio team added a temp track, and everybody came in, and the crew came in and watched it, and it was amazing. A couple people not from the crew watched it as well, and it was really telling when they left the theater. There weren't many dry eyes, and that was a huge sense of relief for me, because I knew that even though this is very primitive looking, that it works. And if you can make something at this level that works, you can make it look better. But it doesn't necessarily work the other way around. You can spend millions of dollars trying to make something work once you've already filmed it, and it may not work. But this way, I felt a great sense of security, I guess I'd say, that everything was heading in the right direction. I know Zach and Mingwen as well saw an early version of it, and yeah, it's entertaining, and it's going to be good when it's finished. If you can only get there. So, at that point, I was beaming with confidence, and I started calling Hollywood again every day. I would try and find a phone number for somebody like Matt Damon or somebody Project Greenlight, trying everything. And usually what I got was the same old thing. We don't accept unsolicited materials. You need an agent. You need this, you need that. But a few people I did get in touch with, and Kathleen Kennedy was one of those people. She was awesome, but this is what a rejection letter looks like from Kathleen Kennedy. Thanks for getting us the video. We've had the opportunity to review your material as well as your web materials. And as discussed, we discussed the project internally. I'm sorry, I can't see the right side. Here we go. We all agree that you've done a great job of demonstrating the potential of your project, but reluctantly, we have to admit that having recently been involved in a similar project in The Last Airbender and with a full development and production slate at the moment, we must respectfully pass on the material. So I don't know. It's like she had just literally that week become the CEO of Lucasfilm. And so she was stepping into a new world, and my timing was just off. At the same time, it's like you just kind of went on a date with, I don't know, Heidi Klum or something, and you went on a second date, and then suddenly the third date, you're flying high, and she's like, I'm going out with Brad Pitt. So you're like, oh, well, you're kind of upset, but you're kind of like, you're still kind of excited because you know that it's still heading in the right direction. I then went to Real Effects, which was Ed Jones, who was previously at ESC. He also did Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and he couldn't get anything going either. But one of his partners mentioned, "Hey, I really liked the Sandbox short film you did. Would you consider shooting real backgrounds with the CG characters?" And at that point, I was thinking, the previs would be kind of like Pixar or something like that, full animated. But then, that struck a chord, and I thought, that might be a possibility. And I then went on to the American film market in Santa Monica. That's not the place you want to go to get funding. That's where you go to sell a film. So I learned a lot about distribution there. I then tried to go to Hong Kong, to their equivalent of the AFM, trying to get funding, but it was early days in Asia. Nobody was doing CG animation in 2012 except for this one company that did Astro Boy, and they had gone out of business already. So at that point, I got even more bold. I'm always trying a different direction. Like if something doesn't work, try something else and never give up, obviously. But so I started calling, if a studio wasn't going to fund it, let me go to the money guys behind the studios. So I started researching these venture capital groups. And so I started emailing out people asking for literally $200 million. And I said, I need $200 million to start a studio. And surprisingly, like when I got, calls into Hollywood, people weren't very receptive at all. You had to have this, you had to have that. When you're talking to these venture capital groups, they were very accepting. She wrote back right away and she said, send me your one sheet. And I said, okay. And I said, I'm thinking to myself, what the hell is a one sheet? So I start Googling, like, how do they want the information to be presented? So I figure it out. I type something up in about 12 hours and I send it back to them and I say, okay, here's our one sheet. Thank you. And she says, okay, I just forwarded it on to our guy. He just landed in Switzerland from his flight and he's going to review it. I mean, literally within 5 minutes, all this stuff is happening and they're making decisions. And he writes back and he says, I'm sorry, at this point, we just invested in Legendary Pictures and we're not funding anything else in the film arena. So that was a wild weekend for me of just, oh my God, I'm going to own a whole film studio and I'm going to be able to help all my friends fund all their films and we're going to do this. And then I was like, oh, damn. So that was a lot of fun. I couldn't believe I asked for that much money. At the same time, it was just surreal. It's very surreal at that point. It's not even real. I then went to The Hobbit, back to New Zealand to work to help out on that. That was an amazing, we were doing 48 frames a second. And on the weekends, I would go out filming. So the guy at Real Effects kind of inspired me to go shoot these backgrounds. So this beach background is in the north of New Zealand. And then the following weekend, I went to a ski resort in the middle of the island and I just had tennis shoes and I got a lift pass and all these skiers are going up the mountain and I started shooting the backgrounds for the snow scenes. And right off camera, there's all these people skiing and having a good time and stuff, and drinking at the restaurants, and I'm just running around with my camera in the snow. And that was epic. Really fun. I then planned out the China shoot, so all the places that I had pre-visualized, like, this was just from my imagination. I thought something cool would be something like the Forbidden Palace in Beijing, and then I would get online here and I would look at all the little photos of people and their locations that had taken photographs and uploaded photographs. And so I started finding all the locations. I was like, "Oh my god, that looks like the previs," and that was Wudang Mountains in China, which is the birthplace of Tai Chi. So I would tick that on the map, and then I would keep looking for other places, and I found this ancient kitchen in this National Geographic article, and that was up almost to the border of Tibet. Everybody there was Tibetan, and that was 2 hours by bus, and I planned out the itinerary, going to each location, and I wrote in Chinese what the name of the bus stop was, or what the name of the next train station and the schedule, and I planned everything out to a T. And so for 30 days, I literally busted my hump. Some days I got to stay in a hotel, but most of the nights I was sleeping overnight on the train to get to the next location. And a lot of these locations, like this one temple in Danyang, I had to take the bus from here to Xi'an, and at some point, I just had to know how to get off. And I'm on a bus with 80 other people, and I'm looking out the window like, when do I get off? Is someone going to tell me? Like, and it just so happens that the nice couple next to me had these flowers. And I pointed at them and I was like, how, like, I speak very little Chinese. And they were like explaining to me something, but in that sentence, I heard Danyang. And I thought, oh my God, these people are getting off where I'm getting off. So that's kind of how everything went. I was kind of guided by the universe in this wild way, kind of like The Alchemist, where of 80 people on the whole bus ride, these two nice old folks next to me happened to be getting off at this temple in the middle of nowhere. And so I followed them. And so I went to these little cottages really early in the morning and filmed, and the janitors would let me in. Mingwen and Zach, we met before, and she helped me with a little card that said, "I've journeyed very far to take photographs of your beautiful country." And all the different areas in China spoke different dialects and some different languages entirely sometimes. But they could all read this card, and then they would let me into these places that otherwise they would just be like, "Who the hell are you?" Uh, but this cottage was like 6 in the morning, literally. And in China, everything starts very early. So by 7, this place would be swamped. But I got up like super early to shoot these places. And this location here, nobody wanted to take me to this location. I found it on Google Earth, just using the satellite view. I found these ruins, and I wanted to go film them because part of the scene is destroyed. One of the scenes is a destroyed temple. And they're like, "You don't want to go see that. Nobody wants to see something dilapidated." For them, it was like a waste of time, but I eventually convinced them to take me up there. And the scenery was amazing. And they were really surprised that I like to see ruins. They're like, "Why don't you want to see it all nice? Like, we got nice ones over here you can look at." So there was a lot of cultural differences, and I never told anybody I was working on a film because I didn't want them to up the price or anything like that. I was just one guy going through the countryside. Here's the border of Vietnam is on the left side here, and this is China here. And so when I planned out the shoots, obviously I'd just seen other people's photographs and I didn't know the actual terrain. So when I got here, this was all railing, guard railing, and the whole right side was full of tourists. But the left side, there wasn't a single person there. And so I said, oh shit, how am I going to get over to the other side? So I found this guy with a moped, and I happened to have a day visa for Vietnam. And so he took me over one morning, and I got on the other side and I filmed everything that I needed. So yeah, it was a little bit risky, but I just had to get it done. So there's that kind of can-do spirit, just get it done. There's a will, there's a way, and I went all that way. I wasn't gonna leave without the photographs, and so at one point, I'm standing on this waterfall, and he's hanging onto my belt buckle as I'm leaning over. There weren't drones at the time, so I'm just kinda leaning over the waterfall trying to get all the shots in the previs. It was a hell of a lot of fun, and the food was so good. I could talk for hours about that trip, but I came back, and at that point, I moved back in with my parents on the East Coast, and I just started working on assembling all the stuff I had shot into a trailer. I knew people weren't going to be interested in watching a previs, but if I could make a short trailer, that could get some interest. So this is a photogrammetry. What that is a series of photographs to assemble a model. So I wasn't modeling this initial concept trailer. I was building these images from photographs. So it was a very quick and easy and dirty way of assembling a quick set. So this is some of the statues at Wudang, and then this pillar was just in the middle of town. And I put these characters together here, and the feedback was great. People said, you need better character design, you need better sets. And I'm like, yeah, well, that kind of stuff happens when you have funding. But I'm still trying to get to that point. So I basically always take people's comments to heart because they're your viewers and they have expectations. And so I went to Indiegogo and I tried a crowdfunder, and the purpose of that was to try and get funding. And we raised about $16,000, which obviously isn't enough to do a feature, but we spent all that money on redoing the models. So I worked with my friend Mike. He was in Boston, and I knew him from high school. He has a great eye for making stuff that's kind of Disney-esque, but looks familiar, but it's just unique enough that it's original and it could be original look for us. And so that was awesome. He started cranking out these things. I then went and got this guy here, Victor Hugo. He was amazing as well. He's in Brazil. A lot of our team is in Brazil. And he had this unique way of making stylized characters in a real environment. So when I saw that, I thought, we have these real environments that we had shot in China, and now we need cool characters to fit in them. And this was our guy. So he started taking, these crappy models and turning them into something really awesome. And so we started step by step upgrading the film. And it's cool because, I never had any doubts of, is this going to be good or not? Because I knew the film was already completed at that point in previs. I knew it was going to be good. It's just a matter of upping the quality until it gets to a acceptable level for audiences, something they're familiar with. And that requires artists, that requires all the talent and skills that they have, and that requires the majority of the funds. So we blew through that crowdfunding money pretty quickly, creating these models and animating things. So then I went and I said, okay, what's another way I can get funding? So I thought maybe I can get a book deal, like Hunger Games, Harry Potter, all these movies are getting made because they're books. So I spent the next year writing a book version. My friend Cody designed these cool little characters for selling toys, and Eric did an audiobook version. It was amazing, but that did not lead to any deals. I kind of blew it with the book agents. When you write a screenplay, you're writing in the present tense, but when you write a book, it's always in the past tense. And I did not know that. It's just one of those things that you just don't think about. So I emailed it out to everybody, the first draft. They're like, this needs a lot of work, buddy. And I'm like, well, I can do that, but there was no receptivity at that point. They wanted something that wasn't going to require much work to get out to the readers. So I spent another, I don't know, 6 months, 9 months writing it a few more times until it was good enough. And I put it on Amazon, and it's still on Amazon, and there's a lot of great reviews. And that was awesome because here I could add in all the details of the story that I couldn't possibly get into a movie, all the secrets about Chi and all the stuff I had learned and all the backstory. So that was a really worthwhile exercise, even though it didn't amount to the funding that we needed. I knew at some point people would read it once the movie got out there. But I did finally get a break in 2015, 10 years into it. One of the people I contacted after the crowdfunding She worked really hard to get us several different connections in Hollywood. Um, and it turns out that one of the people that she knew, I blurred everybody out for privacy. And I don't know if they want me telling the story, but anyway, I'm gonna just break it down simply. This guy, his neighbor was this guy, and he was the roommate of this guy, and this guy was the president of the Shanghai Film Group in Shanghai. So this guy hadn't seen his friend in 40 years, but his neighbor was connected to this lady. And so we all flew over and we watched the film and they loved it and they wanted to fund it. Then they started changing things like the title, and I didn't think much of that. I'm easygoing, but it started getting a little bit more cartoony. And then he wanted me to sign a deal with him and cut the lady out who found him. And I thought, well, if that's going to happen, at what point are you going to cut me out? And it just kind of, once money got involved, people started doing crazy things. So I walked away from that deal and I felt really bad about doing that. I got really sick afterwards, but just from an integrity kind of standpoint, I didn't feel good about it. I didn't know this guy very well. I trusted this guy because he's been through it how many times. But ultimately, the safe thing was to walk. And, in Chinese culture, they say retreat and fight another day. That was the approach. So I retreated and I started upping the level of the film. Deadpool was the film that I worked on after that. And Deadpool, for those that don't know, was also kind of boosted by crowdfunding in a way because he had tried to get the film made for so many years. And once the test was released on the internet, it suddenly got funded. That kind of re-inspired me to keep going. I was really down in the dumps for about 9 months there, and I got really sick. But I got back up on my feet. I recut the film with these new scenes that were bigger and better. We really amped it up past the point that any single person could do it. I knew at this point I was going to require a team and a studio, but that's what the movie warranted. I mean, nobody can do a film entirely on their own. I've taken this as far as I can on my own. But there's a reason it's collaborative, and there's a reason that nobody tries to do this on their own. It's damn near impossible, especially if you want to reach the level of quality that people expect. You can make a cool indie film, but if you want to make something that's action packed and on the level, you really need a really good team. And so we've assembled one slowly, but we really need the funds. This is Raya. This recently came out. We met with Don Hahn, who was the producer of The Lion King, the original Lion King, and he checked the film out. He thought it was awesome, but ultimately he was working on 4 other films at Paramount. And I think what happened, I don't know for sure, but Disney around that time dropped the film they were working on called Gigantic and started this movie called Raya. So once again, it was like, why are these 2 films going to compete? And he had other films he was going to work on. And so, yeah, that didn't work out. But again, it was a boost because he said this has really strong potential. So again, this is what Raya looks like. She's got a rice hat. There's a lot of similarities, but it's just because of the cultural similarities. The films are completely different, and this is $100 million film, and this is not, and we're not too far behind. Again, it's just going to take a little bit more work. The story is awesome, and we'll get there. That's my attitude: is we're going to get there. So I went back to China a second time to reshoot all the new scenes and stuff that we had been working on and adding. And I stopped in Beijing on the way back, and I went right into one of these big companies. I'm not going to say which one in particular, but I sat in the lobby until I got a meeting. And I had a presentation for them, and I talked to them, and they said, this is really cool. Finish 30 minutes and we'll watch that. And if we like it, then we'll fund the rest of it. So I was like, that's kind of cool, but I need help getting to 30 minutes. And they're like, we can't help you with that, but come back when you can. And so I thank them very much for their time. And a little bit later, here's Guillermo del Toro winning his Oscar, and he says, "Hollywood, this is a door. Kick it open and come in." And I'm thinking, dude, we are trying. Maybe we got to do flying side kicks or triple kicks. I don't know what it's going to take. We're going to get there though. Um, the following year, I went back a second time to Beijing and I screened the film for another one of the big studios there. And they had several cultural sensitivity notes, they call them, which is once they want to fund it, they know they have to clear the government censors. And so there's a lot of notes that they give to keep the film harmonious with everybody in their country. And so we listened to those notes. We started making the changes. It's a lot of small little things like the boy and the girl can't kiss, and one of the statues of Kuan Yin needed to be more historically accurate, and all these things to keep anybody from possibly getting upset is basically what it is. It took me 6 months to make those changes, and Steve went in and changed all the audio again for us, but they did not fund any of that. And my intent was to go back and show it to them a second time, but then COVID happened and I have not been able to go back. So that's about where we're at today. I have a new trailer coming out next month, which is awesome. I've been working hard on that, and we're still looking for the funding to get over the finish line. Um, and I wanted to finish with a quote here. This is on the first page of the book, actually. It says, Kung Fu is not about using your body to fight. That is the lowest level of practice. The highest level is the spirit, using your spirit to win over your opponent by teaching, changing, and healing until there is no opponent. And that's basically White Tiger Legend in a nutshell. The entire film is about healing and realizing that peace is more important than fighting. It's really a universal story that's going to appeal to a lot of people. And I can't wait for it to hit the screen. I can't wait to get funded so that we can finish this at a reasonable some year soon. And yeah, just never give up. If whatever it is that's your passion in life, just go for it because you only live once and life is short. So thank you. Yeah, got any questions? I'd be happy to, you know, share any insights I possibly can into this crazy, crazy, crazy adventure.
Kory, thanks a lot. I mean, knowing Kory for a little while, I've only heard bits and pieces of this story, and of course, I've we were watched the screening like back in New Zealand when we were there. But just listening to the entire journey, what you went through, showing the little card you're talking about, us helping you write,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
a. I mean, it's definitely. I mean, at the end of the day, when you get this made someday, we can always like look back and this has definitely been like a life challenge, really, right? I mean, you see all these
for
people you
sure.
have to talk to, all the scenarios you run through. It looks so easy when when you see it from the outside, but when you're
Mm,
trying to get into it, like that inner circle, just like in Hollywood, everybody, you need to know someone who knows someone, you need an agent. Everything is so set in stone that people
mm,
aren't too flexible. And that's like that with, I think, with a lot of other industries as well. But just hearing that story, it's like tough, but the more you push on, that's kind of how you get, get stronger, get more, I guess, positive energy to push on and try and finish something that you really want to do.
absolutely, absolutely.
And at the same
Yeah,
time, work on Peter Jackson films.
yeah, totally. It could be worse.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Does anybody have any questions for Kory, or you just want to chat about some interest? I mean, I'll leave it open if there are any questions anyone wants to ask.
Sure. Yeah. I'll ask a technical question. Yeah, that was amazing, Corey. Wow. I mean,
Cool.
thank you so much for sharing all that and your personal journey through it too. I mean, that's
Mm,
most of it, but yeah. I mean, I kind of knew, back in the day when 'cause we worked at ESC together, for what, 2 years or so, and then Tippett briefly, and you were always kind
yeah.
of a real gun ho kind of go for it, sort of person and stuff. So it's really it's fascinating to hear that same kind of mentality that you have, but now obviously grown and and developed
Mm.
even further. Yeah, no, just curious, kind of what kind of softwares you're using. I mean, are you using Unreal as well? I mean, or what kind, because it's
Oh yeah, yeah.
been across such a long span of time, and obviously the tools have changed drastically. But how are you?
Yeah. I started with Motion Builder, and Motion Builder helped me to assemble the motion takes with the editing. So it was kind of like a combination of Premiere, and they have this story mode, which is really cool. So you can edit inside with the motion capture. That was one of the tools, as well as Maya. I haven't gotten into the real time yet. I'm curious about that, but I also know how much work is front loaded. So how much you have to have all the textures and everything done, and everything set up, and then you can render it in real time, obviously, at that point. Um, but I've still kind of taking the old school hardware software approach of maybe V-Ray or something like that, of rendering it and looking at it. Um, yeah, I would like to get into the real time if it was building the whole environment. I've also got these real backgrounds, so I still have to composite things. I don't know if you could set up like an image plane or something in Unreal and use the plate that you've already shot, or how that all works. But yeah, yeah, rendering is definitely a hurdle. But yeah, yeah, we'll cross that line at some point. Yeah, cool.
Uh, since yeah, then another question: have you contacted schools and universities and stuff to get
Hmm.
free help, basically, and obviously, an opportunity for students to work with a professional, and get credits and all that?
Yeah, that is good. I have not. I have not done that. Maybe I should. Yeah. Um, do you know of any schools in particular that would have students that would be, eager and capable? Because I know there's a lot of teaching involved. Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, are you based in San Francisco? Is that,
I'm in Hawaii at the moment,
oh,
so
okay, that's what I
yeah,
thought.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
um,
yeah,
well, I don't know Hawaii that well, but
yeah, yeah.
and to be honest, I mean, I left the Bay Area in
Mm,
2007, so I'm kind
yeah.
of out of the loop there. But I was in academia for quite a while out here in
Mm,
London, so
mm,
I can connect you, and suggest, and to people, animators. I mean, it depends what kind of people you're seeking.
yeah.
But obviously, the trailer looks great, and you've got, again, that experience. That there's a school here that I taught at, Escape Studios. It's quite well known in the
Okay.
UK and Europe. And again, it's just proposing it. I mean, very briefly, but proposing it to them, saying, "Hey, here's some full CG shots or whatever, or other 3D,
Right.
3D tasks that you're seeking, and see if people want to jump on." So
Yeah,
um,
that would be great. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I'll take all the help I can get. Yeah, because
yeah,
yeah.
I mean, I guess talking to the Art Academy in San Francisco, that was kind of the equivalent. I mean,
Mhm.
and then obviously any of the other big schools and stuff, because again, you're kind of,
Right.
the selling point is that you've got industry experience. Obviously, you've got incredible filmmaking experience from this whole story, in terms
Mm,
of that. So you've got a lot to offer, in a sense,
right.
for somebody to come on and work on it. I mean, yeah, there might be some mentoring to get people
Sure,
to
sure.
get it to the level that you want. But sometimes, well, not sometimes, quite often, there's quite a few gems in those those schools and recent grads that they just want an opportunity to get fresh work, fresh ideas, and again,
Mhm.
connections as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, and with how everything is remote these days, I don't really think the location is kind of irrelevant. I'm up all night anyway, so sure, I could, yeah, that would be great. I will try and reach out, and yeah, maybe we can connect, and you can connect me with Escape. Cool.
Thanks, David. That's a really good suggestion. Didn't really think about that. Yeah, in the Bay Area, there's I think Academy of Art University and the Art Institute in California too. I think there's a campus up here in the Bay Area as well as in LA. Maybe you could kind of
Yeah,
reach out
totally.
to them. There is someone else I think we worked at ESC. She's the head of like recruitment at a studio in LA that basically just trains for visual effects. I think it's called Nomon. Is it Nomon?
Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, or one of those schools. I think she's down there. Maybe we can connect later, and then I can send you her info as well, because I messaged her recently about the whole meetup scene as well.
Cool, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, I just have a brief quick question. Like
Mhm.
when you were doing all the filming and everything like that in these different areas, like how did you navigate, I guess, there's a lot of political paperwork and, all these visas and all this stuff. Did you have to work with the agencies to get through all that?
In Wellington, I was in New Zealand at the time to go to China. Um, I just went to the embassy there and I got a visa for 30 days. And I have a feeling because I was in New Zealand, it was a lot easier to get that visa than had I been coming from the US at the time. But no, I did not really run into much red tape. I just literally went out and filmed these things. And the camera that I chose was a Canon 60D. It looks like a regular tourist camera. It doesn't look like I was doing anything out of the ordinary. Um, and I was mostly taking still shots for like the major tourist areas. But when I would go out to like the bamboo forest and stuff, I had like a Ronin stabilizer and stuff, and nobody knew what I was doing out there. I did run into police every now and then. They were very helpful, and they were kind of curious because what is this guy doing here? I was literally the only foreigner I saw on my entire trip. I saw maybe a couple of Japanese people in the airport, and then after that, it was like I was the only person that I saw for 30 days. And so whenever I was out in, let's say, like the bamboo forest, I was always very careful not to get around people because the Chinese would come in on for their Sunday, tours, and they were dressed up in their best clothes, and they would travel in their groups. And if they saw me, they thought that guy must be photographing something important. They weren't thinking, why is he focusing the camera on this bamboo? It must be important. So they would all come over and kind of check out what's going on, check out how I was dressed and stuff, and I was just in these dirty clothes, like covered in mud, with mud all over my sneakers, and so it's all the cultural dynamic of that stuff. I was very careful to be extremely nice because I knew I might be the only foreigner this particular town has ever seen, and everybody was so welcoming and nice, and it was really awesome. But when I was filming, I was very careful to go off into places so that I wouldn't be seen, or I would just blend in with the crowd. I did not do any paperwork or anything like that. When I presented all the stuff to the Shanghai Film Group, they said, "That's great. You can use all of this." They don't have the same property and copyright sort of ideas. So I could literally walk onto somebody's farm and start filming, and nobody was going to come out and say anything. It was everybody's farm. It was the people's farm. So it wasn't really an issue. They were kind of just like, who the hell is that guy? And yeah, I was just shooting windmills. I was shooting pictures of rice stalks or whatever I needed per the previs, and I was careful not to mess anything up or leave any garbage or anything like that. So I was just kind of in and out of there, and yeah, it was actually surprisingly very easy. And I don't think people in China at the time really had anybody else doing anything like that. Your average person isn't going to go shoot a film, so they weren't even kind of aware of the possibilities of somebody could be filming an entire movie in their backyard. So yeah, it was really cool though. They were all very excited to see their culture being represented, and they were very happy to see all these things. And a lot of the locations I went to were very famous, like Dufu's cottage or I tried to go to Zhujiagao to see the beautiful leaves changing, but there was a landslide there, so I had to go somewhere else. But yeah, I guess yeah, it was surprisingly very easy. It's a lot more difficult to film in the United States than it was in China, and I found that surprising. I found a lot of things about China surprising. You know, like I thought everybody spoke Mandarin, and that wasn't the case at all. And I thought all the majority is Han, but there was so many diverse cultures in that one country that was really shocking. You know, I was like, I thought everything here was supposed to be the same, and it was very different. It was very cool. Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, sure.
Cool. Well, I think we're a little bit over, but if there aren't any more questions, then thanks, Kory, for coming on, sharing your journey. I'll put this online, then other people can see it, and we can
Oh,
pass
cool.
on information as well. But before everybody goes, I just want to point out our next session is in 2 weeks. I put it in the chat. We're going to have Ben Farrell from Adobe. He is a prototyper. He's written a book called Web Components in Action, and he'll be showing a little bit of what he does at Adobe from mostly web applications, from using 3JS to Unity, JavaScript. He just does just about everything. He's like the Swiss Army knife of prototypers. So and if you're interested in real time or in augmented reality, any kind of web technologies, then maybe join us in about 2 weeks where Ben's going to come on. But if there isn't anything else, I want to thank everyone for coming. I don't know, Davey and Kory, maybe you want to stick around for like 5 minutes. We can just kind of chat and catch up. But Martin and Reina, thank you very much for joining us again, Martin. So I'll see you guys next time.